Against the backdrop of a meeting of national security luminaries, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio last weekend in Munich, Germany, a most amazing event took place. According to police estimates, 250,000 people took to that city's streets in solidarity with the people of Iran, demanding an end to the horrific Sharia supremacist tyranny that has brutally repressed them and threatened us for nearly 50 years. Senator Lindsey Graham conveyed America's support for liberating the Iranian people. His comments came shortly after President Trump observed the end of the Ayatollah's regime would be, quote, the best thing that could happen, unquote. Mr. Trump now has in place military forces that can destroy the mullah's remaining security apparatus. It's time for the promised help is on the way to be translated into help delivered and a true Liberation Day. Let's talk about all this with Josh Hammer. He is a syndicated columnist. His writings appear in Newsweek, among other outlets. His latest book is titled Israel and Civilization: The Fate of the Jewish Nation and the Destiny of the West. An incredibly important work, especially timely in light of developments in the Mideast at the moment. Josh, thank you so much for finding time to come back and talk with us a little bit about what's going on in that portfolio of yours.
Frank, you bet. I appreciate it as always. Thank you.
So let's start with Iran. I personally found it as heartening as just about anything I can recall in recent memory of the people's sentiment in Europe against, again, this very high-level meeting of national security professionals and practitioners. What did you make, first of all, of that outpouring of sentiment, and how do you think it may bear on the situation we see on the ground in Iran at the moment and what is done about it?
Well, it's obviously it's deeply inspiring, whether it's happening in Europe. We also saw similar demonstrations, I believe, in Toronto, in Canada. Los Angeles had their own demonstration this past weekend as well. Frank, I basically see it as follows. It has now been a little over a month since Donald Trump doubled down on his red line. He initially implemented his red line to the mullahs just after the new year. It was January 2nd, January 3rd, where he said that if the regime starts to kill its own people, for us, that will be a red line. And sure enough, Frank, as the world now knows, not only did the Iranians cross that red line, they eviscerated it. They trampled all over it. We do not know the exact number of dissidents who have been slaughtered. Estimates vary from as quote-unquote low as 25 to 40,000 to potentially as high as 80 to 100,000. We genuinely just do not know. Donald Trump then doubled down on that red line around January 15th. Putting up another post on True Social saying that Iranians, take to the streets, try to take back your institutions, help is on the way. And it's been about a month now, and it's somewhat eerily silenced. Now the president, to his credit, has put in multiple aircraft carrier strike groups to the region. He has certainly talked the talk, a classic Trumpian braggadocio, if you will, when it comes to this notion of the Armada and this general just tough talk. But he's kind of boxed himself in here, hasn't he, Frank? He's essentially set his course in dare I say, semi-Calvinistic predetermination fashion. He's not given himself much wiggle room. Now, let me caveat this by saying that if I were advising him, this is not how I would have advised that the situation be handled. I'm not a huge fan of red line talk. I much prefer the old Teddy Roosevelt notion of speak softly and carry a big stick, of deliberating in private and then arriving at an informed plan of action, etc. there. But that's not what he chose here. For better or for worse, he chose a very voluble, very aggressive red line. And at this point, it's a pretty clear situation. After all this talk, after all this military machinery in the region, et cetera, you can basically double down on the Ronald Reagan and the Donald Trump doctrine, because Donald Trump, after all, has hit Qasem Soleimani back in January 2020, the IRGC arch-terrorists. Of course, we saw Operation Midnight Hammer in Iran to end the 12-day war last June. So Trump can double down on Reagan and, yes, Trump, or catastrophically, he can take the path of Jimmy Carter, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden. And I think he's going to do the right thing, Frank, for whatever it's worth, but it's taken an awfully long time, I will say that.
It has taken a long time, and it's interspersed Josh, as you know, including, I think, quite recently, with the president still talking about getting a deal with the mullahs. I mentioned in the commentary the point that he said the best thing that could happen is not a deal, it is the regime going.
Right.
But he still seems to be signaling that he would be prepared if negotiations seemed promising to throw the Iranian people under the bus again and forego this change of regime option, or at least helping effect that. Is that how you read it?
Yeah, so the question, Frank, here is what kind of deal, on the one hand, is capable of being made with these lying people, some of the worst liars on the face of the earth? On the other hand, what kind of deal at this point, given all the red line talk, given all of the aircraft carriers, what deal could possibly meet the condition of then trying to bow away and accept it and try to preserve the integrity and the deterrent effect of the red line itself? And the honest answer, being very blunt, is that such a deal is virtually non-existent. Now, I would love to be proven wrong. I would love to see an enforceable deal whereby the mullahs abdicate. Maybe they seek asylum in Vladimir Putin's bosom in frigid Moscow. Maybe we personally escort them on some military plane there. Maybe the nuclear infrastructure actually is demolished. The ballistic missiles are actually demolished. I mean, count me not just a small skeptic, but a deep and profound skeptic here. It would have to be not just the deal of a lifetime, but the deal of the millennium to justify walking away at this point there, Frank. I don't see it happening. Again, I do think that this is ultimately going to prove to be something of distraction, because I don't think that Donald Trump is foolish enough to just simply back down after all of this talk there. But look, I think it's not exactly a state secret to say that a lot of the folks around the president giving him advice are of mixed opinions in general when it comes to Iran, when it comes to the Middle East, and frankly, when it comes to foreign policy in general. I take some heart, Frank, in the notion that it seems that the number one foreign policy advisor who Donald Trump most relies upon and most listens to is Marco Rubio himself, the Secretary of State, whose thoughts on the Iranian regime going way back to his time coming of political age here in Florida, where I live, his thoughts on that regime are not particularly a matter of much doubt, are they?
Yeah. He's been pretty steadfastly robust about this. We had, of course, Lindsey Graham at the site of that demonstration holding forth, and he's, curried favor with the president. A little unclear whether he is speaking for him when he talks about, this is the moment when, change is going to happen and the United States is going to help with it. But I guess this broader question is, with the forces in place, Josh, and you're a serious student of these matters, the president has a kind of use it or lose it. You talk about being in a box. You can't leave them there indefinitely. You need to rotate them out. You need to bring others in and all that. If he's going to act, is it your assessment that that is in the offing? Or do you think we're still in a, pounding sand awaiting the next signal from the Ayatollahs?
I think that Trump, if I had to predict it here, will probably string out this somewhat of a farce, for being honest, this farce of a negotiation exercise for a little longer. But at some point, Frank, you're right. I mean, you do have to use the weaponry or to redeploy them there. These are multiple aircraft carrier strikes. These are very, very serious things there. I do think that he ultimately is going to take action. I think it'll be serious action. Will Khamenei be in charge of Iran 2 months from now? That I really do not know the answers to, Frank, but I predict that if he does attack, he'll go for the kill shot, probably.
Well, we'll see more about all of this. Stay tuned. We're going to be right back with Josh Hammer right after this.
Welcome to Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Your quick look at the powerful stories of faith and freedom, inspiring audiences across the nation. Angel Studios presents.
I'm Bo Davidson with your Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Did you ever wonder what truly happened in the COVID-19 pandemic and whether Anthony Fauci would ever be held accountable? I think we all have. Filmmaker Jenner First has an upcoming documentary that searches for truth, transparency, and accountability called Thank You, Dr. Fauci.
Governments lie.
Anthony Fauci put everyone on the planet at risk without their consent.
It's beyond suspicious.
Research caused a pandemic, killed 20 million, and cost $25 trillion. Fauci would prefer a lie.
Public trust, national health, and global security are at stake as this documentary digs through thousands of pages of documents and interviews with former officials and whistleblowers in the most controversial narrative of our time that may also be one of the largest cover-ups in modern public health history.
It was the cover.
Why would he trade the Chinese the most advanced biotechnology in the world?
He's a spy.
It's insane.
I don't think this is going to be foolproof. Things are going to slip through.
Fauci knew and lied repeatedly.
Rather than being a partisan hit piece, Thank You, Dr. Fauci is an honest look at the origins of COVID-19 and a potential bioarms race with China. It streams exclusively on Angel Studios app and site starting on October 23rd. And all you need to do is go to angel.com/Rav to stream it. So be ready to watch, question, and share as the quest for truth and accountability continues.
Now is the moment to put your brand in front of an engaged, loyal audience through Real America's Voice. When you advertise on Real America's Voice, you're not just running an ad, you're partnering with trusted voices like Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, and other influential hosts. Backed by millions of monthly listeners.
What's happening? Because of a Real Voice, man. I watch it all the time.
Real America's Voice rocks.
Real America's Voice gives sponsors the chance to put their product front and center, displayed on screen and highlighted by our anchors during exclusive segments and live events.
We're back, and so is Josh Hammer, one of the smartest guys in the firmament, as far as I'm concerned. The guy who has been writing about Israel and civilization, and more generally about the topic of the threats to Western civilization that not only Israel faces, but of course we do as well. And Josh, I'm very keen to get your take on how the jihadis are perceiving what's taking place both in Iran and in Gaza and in Syria and with the Turks and here in the U.S. with the exalted status of Qatar and Turkey at the moment. It's my reading of it that they may not be taking this, as one would hope, as evidence that, they are being sort of rendered less and less and less capable of doing what they like to do, which is to threaten the rest of us, and maybe ultimately going to be, put out of business altogether, as we hope will be the case in Iran. What is your sense of how they're reading all of this? And talk a little bit about, if you would, in the context of what they have in mind for us here in the United States as well.
Well, look, if we're being candid, there's been too much flirtation and at times outright mollycoddling of Islamist state actors from this administration. I'm very supportive of the president, Frank. I'm very supportive of his administration there, but at times they have extended far too many warm, glad-handing arms to troublesome actors. Qatar is easily the number one country that comes to mind. I am disheartened by how close this administration is to Qatar, by how much influence the Qataris and the criminal Al-Thani family seem to have when it comes to this administration there. Certainly the al-Qaeda-light regime in Damascus, led by Ahmed al-Shara, who was a peripatetic al-Qaeda Sunni Islamist jihadi for most of his career, decided to shave his beard, put on a suit, and he's been at times invariably massacring religious minorities, Druze, Christians, etc. And now he's supposed to treat him like he's a normal, upstanding person there. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who is getting ever more radical, seemingly by the day, when it comes to support for Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood and so forth there. He, at two, seems to have more influence than he should. So, and by the way, Saudi Arabia is actually kind of the elephant in the room right now. Saudi Arabia, they're not full Islamists. I mean, the Brotherhood, for instance, is still banned there. But It's been somewhat of an under the radar story, but they've been trending in the wrong direction actually for the past 2 to 3 months or so. It's potentially quite troublesome actually. At times, Al Arabiya, the Saudi state-sponsored television network, in their Arabic broadcasting is starting to sound suspiciously like Al Jazeera, the Qatari network, which is it's itself a big issue. So all of this, the fact that the al-Shah regime in Syria, the Erdogan regime in Ankara, the al-Thani criminal regime in Doha, and now the increasing radicalization of certain voices from Riyadh, all of which are met with essentially silence at best by the administration. This gives the very, very, very wrong lesson, the wrong impression to the mullahs in Iran. It essentially tells them to strain this out, that the administration is potentially not serious when it comes to trying to rein in Islamism there. And certainly, Frank, I think that is very much lurking in the background when it comes to the mullahs' desire to tease out these negotiations for as long as the United States will permit it.
Well, I would just add a slight twist to this. It seems to me that if that's true for the mullahs in Iran, it's even more true for the Sunnis, who are, working, of course, very closely with both Qatar and Turkey. I say Sunni jihadists specifically, which brings me to something much closer at home, Josh, and I know you're focusing on these matters as well. I'm here in Texas, where we're working to try to get approved by Republican primary voters and such others as decide to vote in this upcoming election for a proposition that simply says Texas should prohibit Sharia law. And this measure seems to me to be all the more urgently needed, Josh, because I think what we're seeing in Texas and elsewhere around the country, but particularly here, is a growing aggressiveness of the jihadis, the Sharia supremacists, whatever you want to call them, in the United States and specifically in the Lone Star State. Would that surprise you if that's the takeaway and the knock-on effect of what we're seeing playing out in the Middle East at the moment?
So first of all, my tremendous hat goes off to two of the congressmen from Texas, Chip Roy and Keith Self, who formed this Sharia Free America caucus in the U.S. House. I actually interviewed Congressman Self about this on Dallas-Fort Worth Radio a few months ago. Chip Roy I've known for many, many years. They had one of their big hearings this past week. My colleague, Robert Spencer at the David Horowitz Freedom Center, was there testifying there. And it was really wonderful to kind of bring this conversation to Congress, to hear this colloquy between experts like Robert Spencer and the congressman there. So that was really wonderful to see. Look, Frank, in my estimation, this ballot initiative, and I live in Florida, not in Texas, but I am formally a Texan, actually. This ballot initiative should be a complete and utter no-brainer. Sharia law has not just any place, it has negative place when it comes to the United States, when it comes to the Western civilizational inheritance more generally. When we speak about Western civilization, Frank, we're talking first and foremost about the Bible. We're talking first and foremost about the biblical religions, Judaism and Christianity, the original people of the book and the great Gentile offshoot that really spread this all throughout Western civilization. We're talking to an extent about Aristotelian reasoning and the ancient Greeks and the Romans there, but we're definitely not talking about Sharia law, because it is mutually incompatible to have Sharia values, to have actual affinity or fealty to actual Sharia law itself as a body of law. You can't have that and be a supporter of the United States Constitution. It is a zero-sum game. You cannot square that circle. So if we care about the integrity of citizenship, especially coming up in this nation's 250th anniversary, by the way, this summer we will all be reading together those immortal words of the Declaration of Independence, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Well, I'm not sure that all men are created equal, frankly, in the eyes of Sharia law, for which there is, among many instances, there is such thing as dimitude, as dhimmi status. So that's just a very small example, but you simply cannot hold these two beliefs at once there. So I wish Texans, frankly, nothing but the best there. I would imagine it's probably going to go out, that's going to work out well if I had to guess, but I guess we'll see.
The challenge, as you know, Josh, I'm sure, is that in Texas they have open primaries, basically.
Right.
And so the enemy gets a vote, as one might put it. But I'm cautiously optimistic that the awakening that is taking place in this state as a result of the overplaying of their hand of these jihadis is, in the end, going to translate into a repudiation of Sharia, not only in Texas, but across the country, a repudiation that may manifest itself as a voting issue in the coming election cycle. We desperately need that, Josh, because your appreciation of what's on the line with these jihadis and their lust for conquest and all the rest of it, booty and raping and torturing and so on, all of which, by the way, folks, was the practice of the so-called perfect man, Muhammad, and his injunctions to his followers to emulate him in every way. These are the sorts of things that I think we've got to stand up for, because, Josh, as you say, it is completely antithetical to the Constitution of the United States to embrace any of these tenets of Sharia and Islam. And it falls to us to say so. And I pray very much that we will be able to make it stick as this balloting goes forward. Early voting, I should say, takes place starting on Tuesday, the 17th. And by some estimates, 70% of the votes in these primaries takes place during that 2-week period prior to the 3rd of March. So we need all hands on deck. Your help in both clarifying these issues, Josh, and publicizing them is deeply appreciated at Newsweek and elsewhere. I know you keep it up. Come back to us soon if you want.
You bet, Frank. Thank you.
We'll be right back, folks. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Your quick look at the powerful stories of faith and freedom, inspiring audiences across the nation. Angel Studios presents.
I'm Bo Davidson with your Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Did you ever wonder what truly happened in the COVID-19 pandemic and whether Anthony Fauci would ever be held accountable? I think we all have. Filmmaker Jenner First has an upcoming documentary that searches for truth, transparency, and accountability called Thank You, Dr. Fauci.
Governments lie. Anthony Fauci put everyone on the planet at risk without their consent. It's beyond suspicious.
Research caused a pandemic, killed 20 million, and cost $25 trillion. Fauci would prefer a lie.
Public trust, national health, and global security are at stake as this documentary digs through thousands of pages of documents and interviews with former officials and whistleblowers in the most controversial narrative of our time that may also be one of the largest cover-ups in modern public health history.
There was a cover-up.
Why would we trade the Chinese the most advanced biotechnology in the world?
He's a spy.
It's insane.
I don't think this is going to be foolproof. Things are going to slip through.
Fauci knew and lied repeatedly.
Rather than being a partisan hit piece, Thank You, Dr. Fauci is an honest look at the origins of COVID-19 and a potential bioarms race with China. It streams exclusively on Angel Studios app and site starting on October 23rd. And all you need to do is go to angel.com/Rav to stream it. So be ready to watch, question, and share as the quest for truth and accountability continues.
Now is the moment to put your brand in front of an engaged, loyal audience through Real America's Voice. When you advertise on Real America's Voice, you're not just running an ad, you're partnering with trusted voices like Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, and other influential hosts. Backed by millions of monthly listeners.
What's happening? You guys have a real voice, man. I watch it all the time.
Real America's Voice rocks.
Real America's Voice gives sponsors the chance to put their product front and center, displayed on screen and highlighted by our anchors during exclusive segments and live events.
Welcome back, and a very, very warm welcome to one of my favorite colleagues and duty experts on a matter of incredibly serious import, and that is the issue of whether or not the United States nuclear deterrent posture is still effective. Whether the safety, the reliability, and the military effectiveness of our nuclear stockpile is such that we can reliably deter adversaries like Communist China and the Russian Federation that take very seriously the business of nuclear forces and have been assiduously modernizing theirs for decades. Mark Schneider is one of the country's preeminent authorities on these matters. I had the privilege of working with him almost, I'm sorry to say, the better part of 40 years ago in the Pentagon. At the time, he was the director of the Strategic Forces unit within the Office of the Secretary of Defense. And he went on for years after I left the building, as they say, and served with great distinction as a man who knew what he was talking about, understood the adversaries that we faced, recognized what, self-delusion was being perpetrated on us by elements of the intelligence community and, of course, the State Department, and in other ways helped to maintain, I think, a fairly clear-eyed and much needed assessment of our capabilities, whether they were sufficient to the day and whether adversaries were likely to become more and more aggressive if they thought they weren't. Mark is these days a senior analyst with an extraordinarily important organization, the National Institute for Public Policy. You can find his work there at nipp.org, including a fairly recent and very, very much needed paper on the issue of nuclear testing, which, as we will discuss with Mark, is in a way central to these issues of what the Russians and Chinese have been up to and how we stand vis-a-vis our ability to deter them. Mark, thank you so much for your incredible service to our country, not only in the Pentagon, but as a Foreign Service officer in the State Department for a time. You have been truly a national treasure, and your insights are probably more needed today than ever.
Well, thank you.
Here to share them with us.
Thank you.
So, Mark, let me start by asking you to just give us a sort of situation report, if you will, maybe starting with the Chinese Communist Party's nuclear weapons program, the buildup they've been engaged in for the past couple of decades, I would guess, that is now bearing fruit in very ominous ways.
Well, the Chinese are rapidly expanding their nuclear capabilities. There's no doubt about this. They have the most ambitious and extensive modernization program, and it's not only modernization; it's force expansion. The numbers are increasing at every level. So we have a very different situation in the United States. When the Cold War program ended in 1997, which is when the last B-2, the 20 B-2 bombers was made operational, we've done literally zero nuclear modernization. We have the same forces we had back in the 1990s, with the exception of large numbers of warheads and entire capabilities have been eliminated. that's fundamentally different from what has happened in either China or Russia. Putin says he's modernized 92% of his forces. The State Department says that he's done the modernization, but is actually expanding Russian capabilities, not on the same scale as China. He doesn't have the same sort of money as they do, but it's still very significant, and it's never ending. It's going to continue as far into the future as we can possibly see.
Mm. And when you talk about the kinds of capabilities they put into place in China, Mark, it's not been so long since we were insistently informed, usually by people in the arms control community, but sometimes in the Pentagon and other parts of the U.S. government as well, that China was content to have a so-called minimal deterrent, and it amounted to a couple hundred warheads at most, and that was going to be the state of their force posture for the foreseeable future. When did things change, and are people still clinging to that illusion even now?
Well, certainly the arms control enthusiast community is trying to minimize perceptions of the scope and significance of the Chinese nuclear buildup. Most analysis, including even the Pentagon and the State Department, and I think it's pretty clear that most foreign, allies agree with this, that we're seeing very massive modernization and unique nuclear threats. I mean, the Russians make them on a routine basis. Until recently, Putin had the record for the largest number of nuclear threats. Now his deputy Medvedev has taken that portfolio over, and he makes the most outlandish types of nuclear threats that we've ever heard out of Russia.
Well, and what's particularly alarming, of course, is that they've built some, outlandish, to use your word, military capabilities into this modernized nuclear force. I recall from previous conversations with you, it's been a couple of years now, I think, you were warning that the Russians had put into place something like 24 distinct new nuclear weapons platforms with presumably new nuclear weapons aboard them. Is that still approximately the case, sir? And if so, tell us a little bit about some of the exotic weapons that they've got that back up these nuclear threats, perhaps.
They have announced something on the order of about 25 nuclear modernization programs. The number that have actually entered service is probably at this point close to about 15, but the rest are or most of the rest certainly are continuing. We have a similar situation in China. They have very extensive and much better funded nuclear modernization programs than in Russia, and they're simultaneously not only modernizing but increasing their capabilities across the board and in very significant ways. In particular, certainly in the theater range systems, they're introducing near precision and precision accuracy and building these systems literally by the thousands. I believe that a substantial percentage of them are at least nuclear capable, and all the strategic nuclear forces, of course, are completely nuclear armed at this point.
And Mark, just a quick word on this, if you would. When people use the term theater nuclear weapons, what's really the difference between them and the strategic ones? Is it the size of the yield, or is it just the range, or is it some combination of the two?
It's the range. The yield is probably similar. I believe you have a variety of yields in both Russian and China, ranging from extreme low yields up to multi-megaton yields, depending on the different types of systems. The Russians,
even in
particular,
the tactical category or theater.
Well, these systems can carry high yield weapons. The Russian emphasis is on low yield, very low yield, because they think they can use them and get away with it. And there are large military benefits. Even low sub-kiloton yields are vastly more destructive than any conventional weapon. If they use those in a conflict, they're going to win, and if we don't respond in kind. And
our ability to respond in kind is a problem that we're going to talk about at greater length. Well, I want to reserve that for the next block, and I just want to sort of finish this line of questioning. It's safe to say, I guess, from what you've described, that both the Russians and the Chinese have taken very seriously this idea of an ongoing commitment to nuclear force capabilities and are modernizing their forces for that purpose. And not only that, Mark, but as we'll talk about on the other side of the break, we face now threats not simply individually from those two adversaries, but increasingly they have been literally exercising jointly their abilities to strike the United States. And that's a pretty serious, considerably heightened threat, I would argue, and makes even more tenuous the proposition that we can deter it with our present force. Continue this conversation with Dr. Mark Schneider on the other side of the break. Stay tuned, please.
Hey folks, it's your friend John Rich. I co-founded Old Glory Bank because we heard too many stories about people getting canceled by their bank because they didn't agree with their politics. The government wanted to know where you shopped. If you bought a Bible or you shopped at a sporting goods store, you're probably on a list. We created Old Glory Bank because America needed a bank that would protect their privacy and security. Exercising your constitutional rights is not a criminal activity, and neither is loving your country. At Old Glory Bank, we stand with you.
I'm a J6er. I spent 1,143 days in prison.
About a year in prison.
We were prosecuted, persecuted.
J6ers have been treated like terrorists.
And we need your help.
Stand in the Gap was founded to stand in the gap for J6ers working to rebuild their lives after being incarcerated.
For just $10 or more, you can help these patriots get back on their feet again. Every dollar you give is being matched up to $50,000. Go now to j6support.com and donate today. Welcome to Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Your quick look at the powerful stories of faith and freedom, inspiring audiences across the nation. Angel Studios presents.
I'm Bo Davidson with this Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Most people know the biblical story of David, the shepherd boy who fought Goliath and became king. Well, Angel Studios has created a new animated film called David that tells the story of Israel's greatest king.
Followed when I'm looking for the way, when I'm searching for the answer, in the moments I'm afraid. There's a whisper in the wind and a story in the sky, when I'm looking for a lantern to illuminate the night. If you want the secret of freedom and feeling alive, you gotta follow the light. Follow the light.
For those who love great animated classics like The Lion King and Prince of Egypt, David is an awe-inspiring animated musical that depicts David as a spirited boy who fought lions, giants, and even betrayal, depicting how one boy's faith could lead him to be king of Israel. David will be released in theaters just in time for Christmas on December 19th, but your family can get a head start by watching the prequel to the film, Young David, which is streaming exclusively right now.
We're back. So is Dr. Mark Schneider, now with the National Institute for Public Policy, a longtime senior executive service member in the Department of Defense, back when that's what it was called, now the Department of War. Truly one of the preeminent authorities in this country about all things involving nuclear weapons, whether it's the quality and capability and numbers of them in the hands, particularly of our most prominent adversaries, the degree to which they have pursued in violation of arms control agreements and commitments, some of those buildups, and the implication for all of us if we fail to deter the use of those weapons against us. And Mark, I did want to just ask you to drill down a little bit on this one topic that I introduced at the end of the last block, namely that the Russians and Chinese each have been building up their nuclear arsenals, but at least as worrying is the idea that they are planning and certainly exercising joint strikes against the United States using a combination of those weapon systems. Is that correct? And how extensive is that practice? And what role has Vladimir Putin specifically been playing in all of it?
Well, they certainly have engaged in joint exercises using nuclear capable bombers. As a matter of fact, there was a exercise of this type just within the last week, and this is a concern. There is a real possibility that either a coordinated attack both in Europe and in the Far East between the two of them, or opportunistic attacks. In other words, if one starts a war, the other takes advantage of it to achieve its objectives through military means in its own theater of operations. And this is very, very threatening and very important in light of the fact that we have drastically reduced defense spending since the end of the Cold War, and certainly in terms of percentage of gross national product is well under 40% of what we were doing at the end of the Cold War. And that has big implications because the Chinese in particular have become much more powerful since the end of the Cold War. So we're facing a bigger threat with less capability to deal with it or deter it.
Yeah, and I would argue that the reduction in the investment we've made is even more acute when you look at our nuclear forces, because those were not at the top of the food chain, shall we say, when it came to investments in our various military capabilities, especially with those reductions. Which leads me, Mark, to the next question for you. And that is, how would you characterize the safety, the reliability, and the deterrence effectiveness of the current U.S. arsenal?
Well, I don't think safety is a major problem, although it would be nice to do 1-point safety tests to be absolutely sure of that. Certainly, the types of capabilities that we have, the number of weapons types, and particularly in the tactical or non-strategic nuclear area, has vastly reduced since the end of the Cold War, when we had many thousands of a large variety of nuclear weapons. Now we've, at least according to a senior official of the Biden administration, we got 200 of one type of gravity bomb, and that's our entire non-strategic inventory at this moment in time. And that's dangerous because both Russia and China have lots and lots of capabilities that they might use that we have no in-kind capability to deter it with.
And I think it's fair to say that the preponderance of those theater capabilities, as they're so called, are ballistic missile delivered or cruise missile delivered, not aircraft delivered, which has all kinds of limitations, does it not?
Well, they have everything. I mean, they have bombs as well. They have cruise missiles. They have air-launched cruise missiles. They have ground-launched cruise missiles. I'm talking about nuclear-capable systems, and the number of nuclear-capable systems has actually increased substantially in both of these countries, and they've introduced hypersonic weapons as well. We have no program at this moment in time to ever develop a hypersonic nuclear-capable system. That's scary.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing is scary, Mark, I have to say. I mean, you and I have worked on these issues for a long, long time. And the idea that we would be relying on weapons that were designed for, a useful service life of 10 years, 15 years at most, maybe 20 outside. And that would have been, a decade or more in the rearview mirror. And we've not tested realistically with presumably low yield, but still explosive testing of those weapons since 1992.
Yes.
In your professional judgment, sir, and I know you've written the paper on this subject, so we're going to be talking more about that here in just a moment, but what is your assessment of the confidence that we can have in this arsenal and the confidence that the Russians and Chinese have in its deterrent effect?
Our confidence clearly has declined. We have not conducted nuclear tests since 1992. Our weapons, and there was a report by the Senate Armed Services Committee by Senator Bartlett in 1978, which really laid out this in a very professional way. We have a inherently less robust type of nuclear weapons, so they're more optimized, and they're made safer, and therefore they're more liable to undiagnosed problems. Now, Russia and China,
especially when they're so past their useful service life, as they say. Mark, we have to take a short break. When we come back, I want to talk with you a bit about the role that nuclear testing plays in these calculations of, first of all, what kind of capabilities the Russians and Chinese have acquired, and the uncertainty about our own capabilities. That and more with Mark Schneider. Stay tuned.
Hey folks, it's your friend John Rich. I co-founded Old Glory Bank because we heard too many stories about people getting canceled by their bank because they didn't agree with their politics. The government wanted to know where you shopped. If you bought a Bible or you shopped at a sporting goods store, you're probably on a list. We created Old Glory Bank because America needed a bank that would protect their privacy and security. Exercising your constitutional rights is not a criminal activity, and neither is loving your country. At Old Glory Bank, we stand with you.
I'm a J6er. I spent 1,143 days in prison.
About a year in prison.
We were prosecuted, persecuted.
J6ers have been treated like terrorists.
And we need your help.
Stand in the Gap was founded to stand in the gap for J6ers working to rebuild their lives after being incarcerated.
For just $10 or more, you can help these patriots get back on their feet again. Every dollar you give is being matched up to $50,000. Go now to j6support.com and donate today. Welcome to Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Your quick look at the powerful stories of faith and freedom, inspiring audiences across the nation. Angel Studios presents.
I'm Bo Davidson with this Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Most people know the biblical story of David, the shepherd boy who fought Goliath and became king. Well, Angel Studios has created a new animated film called David that tells the story of Israel's greatest king.
Followed when I'm looking for the way, when I'm searching for the answer, in the moments I'm afraid. There's a whisper in the wind and a story in the sky, when I'm looking for a lantern to illuminate the night. If you want the secret of freedom and feeling alive, you gotta follow the light.
We're back. And so is Dr. Mark Schneider. We have the privilege of picking the considerable brain of a man who has, as I said, a tremendous corporate memory, and hardly anyone else, I think, has anything remotely like his cumulative experience with questions of the adequacy of our nuclear deterrence, the weapons in our arsenal and our adversaries. And he has, to his great credit, devoted considerable time over the years to an issue that has been very profoundly important to me, I have to say, namely, can we have an effective and reliable nuclear deterrent without testing it? Not only without testing it for a short period of time, but without testing it for, well, decades, the last one being in 1992. Mark, you've written an important paper about this at nipp.org, and you've made some very, I think, sensible recommendations about how to proceed. In light of the fact that the State Department's Undersecretary for Arms Control and International Affairs, has been on the record saying the Chinese and Russians, certainly the Chinese, have been testing their nuclear arsenal. And the president has said, we want to be able to do what others are able to do or have been doing. Where do you think we are now on this question about the need for the United States to resume underground, safe, low-yield tests to ensure the adequacy of our current inventory of nuclear weapons?
Well, certainly there's more uncertainty today about the effectiveness of the U.S. nuclear arsenal than there ever has been in the past, based on the fact that we have made changes in our weapons for now almost 35 years without testing any of them. We've done life extension programs, which have introduced, I think, even more significant changes in the weapons without testing them. And basically, it really comes down to this. The only way to be sure that a nuclear weapon works is to test it.
Yes.
And we haven't done that. And could I just say our adversaries have.
Yeah, these are arguably the most complex pieces of machinery that humans have ever produced. Our old weapons now, especially. And this notion, just to go back, if you would, quickly, Mark, the reason that we have stopped testing, apparently, more or less unilaterally, was precisely because the arms controllers believed that if we didn't test, ultimately we would no longer have a nuclear deterrent. Was that not basically the thought?
Well, they won't say that out loud because they're pushing a ban on nuclear testing. But I suspect that a lot of them actually believe that secretly.
Well, I think Mark Hatfield, who got us into this thing, the senator who was championing a nuclear test ban treaty, was pretty explicit. That was his goal, to get us to a point where we no longer had confidence in these things, and we simply had to scrap them.
Well,
and it didn't seem to matter to him that might be a unilateral action, which is crazy.
Yes, that's true. I mean, there are some that have even more extreme views than I've just indicated, certainly, and that's about as extreme as you can get, other than radical pacifism, I suppose.
Yes.
But the reality is that Russia and China and North Korea overtly has and other countries like Pakistan and India have staged nuclear tests after the cessation of American nuclear testing, and that this could result in a very large asymmetry in reliability in the nuclear weapons that we have. I mean, certainly we have some extremely intelligent people designing our nuclear weapons, and they have excellent, best computers in the world. But there is no substitute for nuclear testing. There is still uncertainty, no matter how fast your computers get, because the understanding of the physics of nuclear fusion is not complete. And it may never be. I mean, certainly not within any time in the foreseeable future.
Yeah. And especially, Mark, at the point we find ourselves in now, which is that people who actually designed these weapons and benefited from the tests that we previously did are long since gone. Johnny Foster was one of the last of the Mohicans, and we've lost him now, I'm afraid.
Yes, I don't believe we have a single active weapons designer right now who has designed a nuclear weapon during the testing era, and that weapon was actually tested. Actually, I think we're now 2 generations past nuclear testing, because we certainly are in the second generation of designers who haven't had any real design experience since 1990, or very little, and have never had a testing experience, which is very humbling if the weapon you test doesn't work or comes in with a very anomalous result. And that's one of the overconfidence is one of the most serious problems that we face in terms of the nuclear weapons reliability.
Mark, this reminds me of 2 important anecdotes that I have from years past. One was that Bob Barker, a dear friend of both of ours, who was responsible for the nuclear weapons test program in the Pentagon for a time, said, "We were always surprised when we tested nuclear weapons. Sometimes it was at the margins, but sometimes it was that there was a catastrophic problem." And Dr. Steve Young, as I recall his name, younger maybe, at the nuclear test site, once told me that one of his bright young guys came to him at some point and said, "I hate experimentation. It interferes with my calculations." Well,
yes,
that can ensure that some of these things don't work. Mark, we are hard out of time. Much more to talk about with you. I hope you'll come back to us again very soon. I hope the rest of you will do the same next time. Until then, go forth and multiply.
Hey folks, it's your friend John Rich. I co-founded Old Glory Bank because we heard too many stories about people getting canceled by their bank because they didn't agree with their politics. The government wanted to know where you shopped. If you bought a Bible or you shopped at a sporting goods store, you're probably on a list. We created Old Glory Bank because America needed a bank that would protect their privacy and security. Exercising your constitutional rights is not a criminal activity, and neither is loving your country. At Old Glory Bank, we stand with you.
I'm a J6er. I spent 1,143 days in prison.
About a year in prison.
We were prosecuted, persecuted.
J6ers have been treated like terrorists.
And we need your help.
Stand in the Gap was founded to stand in the gap for J6ers working to rebuild their lives after being incarcerated.
For just $10 or more, you can help these patriots get back on their feet again. Every dollar you give is being matched up to $50,000. Go now to j6support.com and donate today. Welcome to Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Your quick look at the powerful stories of faith and freedom, inspiring audiences across the nation. Angel Studios presents.
I'm Bo Davidson with this Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Most people know the biblical story of David, the shepherd boy who fought Goliath and became king. Well, Angel Studios has created a new animated film called David that tells the story of Israel's greatest king.
is followed when I'm looking for the way, when I'm searching for the answer. In the moments I'm afraid, there's a whisper in the wind and a story in the sky.